Ready? Play.
Welcome back to Painting Lines. Last week we discussed the Asian swing, giving an update on it as a whole. And this week we wanted to give a bit of a deep dive on the history of the Shanghai Masters as it kicked off this week.
Yeah, let's go, Aiden. This is a tournament that I don't know a whole lot about, so why don't you give us a little brief history lesson on it?
Sounds good. Sounds good. So it started back in 2009, and in that year it replaced Hamburg on the Masters 1000 schedule. And the interesting thing about this was Hamburg was a clay tournament. So they wanted to keep the same number of like clay and hard court Masters 1000. So when they replaced Hamburg, they actually shifted Madrid from being an indoor hard court tournament to being now like it is today on clay. And Shanghai replaced it as an indoor hard court tournament. And to me, the first thing I think about with this is it kind of gave an opportunity, I feel like, to maybe make a bigger change, because sometimes it's hard to convince people, okay, we need to make a change with this. And people are like, oh, I don't really know what to do. But I feel like when they did have the chance here, maybe they could have made a bigger change, like adding a grass court Masters. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, well, I thought it was interesting that you said Madrid was indoor hard to clay because right now you kind of think of Madrid as like the Masters clay tournament, as like the biggest
Yeah,
one.
synonymous with being on clay. Exactly.
But making another grass, I don't know. I feel like the clay and hard, it makes sense to do that. Like grass is such a small part. So I think it's that way for a reason, less injury too. Because remember, we talked about how many players got hurt during the grass season and how the footing's not great. So also another thing, I don't know how many countries' climates are suited to grass, right? That could be another factor.
Yeah, I honestly wonder. I mean, that doesn't seem like a really realistic thing. Never mind. I was gonna say, I wonder if they could
So
make it like an indoor, like almost like a greenhouse and do an indoor grass court.
yeah,
Because you were
or not
talking about
even
the climate there.
yeah, totally. But also artificial turf too, or like that carpet. Like I'm
Yeah.
sure they used to do that back in the day. That's something I gotta look into.
Well, I think that that was what carpet was it was kind of like a indoor sort of astroturf type of surface. But I think there were even more injuries than on there is on
Yeah,
grass
yeah.
on carpet
But
tournaments.
was there were ATP tournaments on carpet,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Yeah, geez.
But yeah, so back in 2009, the first winner was Davydenko after the tournament got upgraded from a to a 1000 rather, and this was actually one of Davydenko's three Masters 1000 wins. And in this tournament, he beat both Djokovic and Nadal. So to me, this is another case of a guy that peaked during the Big Three era, and after his career finished, like if people followed tennis during that era, they know who Davydenko was. But later fans that became tennis fans after maybe 2014 when he retired, they don't really hear about this guy. Like people will hear about guys from before the Big Three era, like oh, let's talk about Marcelo Rios. Let's talk about think of bigger names, Sampras, Agassi. Go guys like that. But Davydenko, because he was both in the Big Three era and because of that, didn't have a crazy career with Grand Slams, for example, kind of is a guy that just gets swept under the rug.
Yeah, definitely. And he beat them in their prime too, or like just about. Because
100%.
you have guys these days who like Herkoch comes to mind, who's beaten I think all the big three, but like he hasn't reached the level that Davydenko has reached in his peak. So it's
Yeah.
like Davydenko was a better player, but Herkoch is still beating the big three.
Yeah. It's very weird when you look
Yeah,
at it like that, 100%.
yeah,
Um, but speaking on the history of this, the guys that won it for a long time were Murray, Fed, and Djokovic. They actually won the tournament for 9 straight years, where Djokovic won four, Murray won three, and Federer won two. And actually, in this year or in these years, Nadal had zero wins of this tournament. So it kind of gives support to that big four argument, where yeah, people are like, oh, Murray didn't win even close to as many slams, but if you look at a tournament like this, he had more than both Federer and Nadal.
yeah.
But that kind of ended in 2019 when Medvedev won it. And then after Medvedev won it, actually, the tournament wasn't held for 3 years. So from 2020 to 2022, it wasn't held because of COVID. And then it came back for the first time last year, and it was won by Hurkacz. Kind of a surprise winner. He beat Rublev in the final, but that was pretty big for him. And yeah, overall, that's kind of a brief summary of the history of the Shanghai Masters.
So that's how Hurkacz got into the finals, right? The ATP finals, kind of like that last sprint
Well,
right
wasn't
there, this
Hurkacz,
win.
I believe, was an alternate, right,
The
last year?
alternate. All right, so I guess he got to the alternate status
Exactly,
by
exactly.
hitting the sprint. Because I
Yeah,
wonder
just
how much he jumped,
yeah. I remember
like
last year.
how what he was ranked
I think we were
before.
talking about it last year. Yeah, like he made like a little bit of a push at the end, and we were like, oh, how did he even make it in?
Yeah, it was like Jack Sock winning Paris.
Hundred
Like,
percent.
really, really out of the race and then wins this Masters 1000. All of a sudden he's in there.
Exactly. That's a great comparison, I think.
Yeah, yeah. It's surprising Nadal hasn't won any. I know in 2017 he made it to the finals because there's that funny video of he and Federer at the end, trying to speak Chinese. The tournament director was giving him the microphone, and they were like, "I can't say the exact words, but it was just a great video, and definitely check it out if you haven't seen it because it's very wholesome Nadal, like
Yeah,
funny where you could be kind of that
100%.
comedian."
Yeah, I mean, this is one of only a couple Masters 1000 that Nadal hasn't won. I mean, obviously, we know Djokovic is the only guy that's won all of the Masters 1000, and I think he's done it twice now. But yeah, it's one of those ones where he never got it all the way through the final. But that reminds me the videos like that where they're trying to speak a language they don't necessarily know super well. Have you ever seen the video of Blake Griffin and Luka Doncic when the NBA played in Mexico?
No, no,
Uh,
that
it's
sounds
it's
funny though.
it's pretty funny because Luka Doncic played in Spain, so he speaks Spanish pretty well,
Right.
and I wouldn't doubt if he was fluent. And so he gives this whole speech in Spanish, and then they hand the mic to Blake Griffin, and he just goes, "Hola Mexico."
Oh, that's great. Bien,
Yeah,
gracias, you too.
exactly, exactly. He has like first grade Spanish.
Yeah. That's funny though. Djokovic he must play very well in Asia. Because remember when I was talking about Beijing, I said he won it like 7 out of the 8 years from 2009 on. So this guy's just
Yeah, I
he
mean,
loves the Asian swing.
I think it's just one of those things where it's like Djokovic plays great everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, true.
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of a history of Shanghai. But just before we go into segments, let's just hop into what happened actually last week because we gave an update on what had happened through the first part of the Asian swing. But obviously, Tokyo and Beijing both wrapped up. So just wanted to give a little bit of a comment on the finals here. So in Tokyo, it was an all French final, Fields versus Humbert or Fields. And then this match was actually really interesting because Fields was down a match point in this match, and he was in a bad situation on that point. So Humbert served it and then hit a very nice approach shot, and Fields was fully off on the other side of the court. And I made a post about this because he really had all the chance to give up. Like many guys could have just stopped running and there would have been no criticism. It would have been like, oh, great shot there from Humbert. And instead, Fields runs down this ball, gets to it. Humbert goes inside out, and then Fields hits a beautiful passing shot, wins the point, ends up winning that set in a tiebreak, and then ends up coming back in that third set and winning the match. So really just showed the heart of a champion and didn't give up on himself or the match.
Oh yeah, talk about a turning point, huh? Because like that's what you need to reignite that fire when you're in a final. And
Yeah,
I thought it was funny because remember we were talking about Humbert last week too. We're like, oh, we barely even mentioned his name anymore after the start of last year. Of course, he makes the final now.
exactly. It's a speak of the devil, and all of a sudden he's just like in
Yeah,
everyone right at the headline again.
yeah. But I feel like that match, it had a lot of like reoccurring points. Like a lot of the points looked the same, and it was kind of like that point you just described. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
like
Humbert just seemed to see that it was working, right?
yeah. Well, Bear, I texted you this. Remember, he looked like a sniper out there. He was literally painting lines. Like, no pun
Exactly.
intended, but he hits big and he goes for risky shots on the line.
Yeah, and maybe that's why he didn't actually end up winning that point, because he maybe played a little bit safer than he could have because it was match point.
Yeah, yeah, good point. Good point. Oof.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
then
I'm very excited about Fields.
100%. Yeah, I mean, great step up for him. I think he maybe even went past Umber in the rankings.
Could be, could be, could
Yeah, I
be.
mean,
I'm
either
standing
way,
by
it's
my
either way, it's very close.
yeah, standing by my statement last week. Future top 10,
100%.
and I think we could see it soon.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely getting close there. And there's, not to just bring the age aspect into it, but there's a lot of guys that are older than him ahead of him. So in a couple of years, I could definitely see him up there.
Yeah, totally.
But then in Beijing, like I was talking about, we had kind of the opposite to Tokyo, where a lot of the top seeds went out in Tokyo. And Beijing, we saw those top level matchups in the final couple rounds. First up, Alcaraz versus Medvedev. Uh, this was an interesting match where there were 4 service breaks in a row in the first set, which I feel like is not as common. Both these guys are great returners, but still seeing 4 in a row is crazy. But with that, it kind of felt like Medvedev just sometimes isn't super locked in on the match. Like, he got broken twice here, and it felt like it was almost just because he wasn't locked in on holding his serve.
Yeah, I wonder if it's one of those where you just kind of he went in like not really that confident, thinking like, okay, I'm playing Alcaraz. Who knows? Once you get broken the first time, it's kind of demoralizing. Maybe you're like, holy shit, this guy is all over the place the second time. And then he's just kind of like, all right, whatever. I'm going to hedge my bets and I'm going to have fun out there. I'm going to hit. Like, I'm not really going to get too down on myself. And like, that's kind of the result that you see.
Yeah. And then he made a comment at the net after, right?
Yeah, he did. It was funny. He's like, I'm going to. I'm gonna paint my hair blonde and I'm gonna write Botic on my shirt next time I play you.
Exactly. I mean, that
See, like
was
he's making jokes.
yeah, the most shocking match of the year versus Alcaraz, and Medvedev's like, I got to do something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's funny you mentioned that. Like those guys, those are my remember my bet, the 3 leg parlay. All
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
top guys. I was like, all right, well, I'm just gonna bet them.
Exactly. But I mean, for Medvedev, he's titleless this year now. And even coming into Shanghai, it's like, do you expect him to be able to beat these top guys? Kind of not, at least not both of them, because Alcaraz and Sinner have just been like a step above him in this year in most of the big tournaments. And just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a background on that statement. Like, if you go back through some of the biggest tournaments this year, in the Australian Open, he makes the final. He beat Zverev, but he lost to Sinner.
Hmm.
Indian Wells, he makes the final, loses to Sinner. Miami semifinal, loses to Sinner, and that one was pretty
Yeah,
bad. I think it was 1 and
dismantled.
2. Um, Wimbledon makes the semifinal where he beats Sinner, but he loses to Alcaraz. And then in the U.S. Open, loses to Sinner. Now this week, loses to Alcaraz. It's like he can maybe beat one of them, but he just can't beat both of them. And most of the time, he doesn't beat either.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's a great player, no doubt. It's just his play style, like that passive game that he plays, is just not gonna work against these two because they're super aggressive.
Yeah,
Like it works
exactly.
against someone who's not as good as Alcaraz and Sinner because you can eventually wait for them to make errors. But I think here that you have to play aggressive and you have to take chances against them.
Exactly. He's like the perfect example of a player with like an incredibly high floor level of play a lot of the time.
Hmm.
Like, most of the matches he goes in, you can expect like a crazy high level. But if someone pushes that, he can't take the next step up almost, it feels like.
Yeah, yeah. Like you kind of see it with Zverev too. I feel like he's also kind of a passive player, and I think that's why he doesn't tend to do too well against Sinner and Alcaraz.
Yeah. I mean, the question here is, I just think, just like, is he going to take that step up? Like, is he going to make a change with maybe his play style or like a coaching change? Is he going to step up, or is he just going to kind of continue to sit right at that top 5 level, but just below them?
Yeah, personally, I think he's just, yeah, I don't think he's going to step up. I think he's kind of past that point in his career. What is he like 28, 29?
Yeah, I think, yeah, 27,
It's just,
28.
yeah, he's a little old for that to completely change up his game. And I don't see him making any team changes. I think he's pretty happy where he is.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's in a situation where like, he could get lucky in a tournament where
Hmm.
maybe he only has to beat one of them, and he does it, and then he
Yeah.
wins the tournament. But it's hard to kind of bet on that and be like, hey, I'm just gonna hope that I don't have to play both of them.
Yeah, at least he has his grand slam. He can think about that. He can
Yeah, he's
sleep
got the
tight
one.
now. The one.
Yeah. But and then the other matchup obviously was the final, which was a great match. Just want to give a quick breakdown of that one. So the first set, Alcaraz led 5-2 and had a set point, but he ended up losing it where Sinner battled back and then held serve at the end and took the tiebreak. The second set, it was later in the set that was going on, and Alcaraz he had a tough service game where it was 3-4, and Sinner had a few break chances, but Alcaraz holds on, and it was one of those classic situations where Sinner put so much into trying to break Alcaraz that as soon as he loses that game, he immediately gets broken, and Alcaraz took that second set. And then in the final set, Alcaraz kind of continued with that momentum, went up a break. Sinner battled back into it. And then in that tie break, he went down 3-0. And then instead of giving up, he's able to battle back and end up taking the title. So, I mean, just a great recovery from him. And honestly, this is coming after a pretty poor performance in both Cincinnati and the U.S. Open. So I think good a good step for him.
Yeah, and I think us tennis fans finally got what we wanted here, like a phenomenal final and just the next the next generation kind of coming in and being like, okay, you're still going to see amazing tennis and we got it right here. And one more thing. So what time was it? You watched the match? And because I remember I woke up at like 7:30 and it was just going into the end of the third set. So
Yeah, it
like you
was
watched the whole
a
thing,
pretty
didn't
a
you?
pretty aggressive night for me.
Yeah.
I got up and I was like, okay, I'll watch most of this match, and then the match was just so good. I was like, I can't go to sleep now, and then it
Yeah.
was just like an all night thing.
I know, because for me it was like I think I don't know, 4 a.m. start. So I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I'll catch it when I wake up. And sure enough, like it did not disappoint. I watched it on my way to work on the subway. And yeah, when Sinner went up 3-0, I was like, okay, this is it. He's up two breaks. Sure enough, Alcaraz just wins every point after. And those
exactly,
points too in the tiebreaker were amazing. They just covered so much court.
exactly, 100%. I mean, just high level tennis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And those fans, it's like you could tell, I think they were really rooting for Alcaraz because like you heard it, but just can you imagine being there and seeing that tennis? Like it was just electric.
Unbelievable.
If only that was an Arthur Ashe.
Exactly. I mean, I feel like Alcaraz would just have been even more playing into the crowd in Arthur Ashe though, like because that's
Yeah.
just the biggest tennis stadium in the world.
Yeah, I wonder if that affected Sinner somewhat because you know how he doesn't really play into the crowd if the overall bias, like when Alcaraz was getting those break points back, and you could tell the crowd was behind him. Maybe Sinner kind of got a little like walled off.
Rattled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rattled.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like a lot of people probably do like they do say that the crowd can have an impact on the mental.
Mhm.
So with Alcaraz being such a big fan favorite there, it probably did to an extent.
Yeah, yeah, we shall see.
100%. You ready to hop into segments here?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. What's new in tennis? What'd you see this week?
I saw a curious take aim at Sinner again about this whole doping thing. I know, right? So he replied to a tweet from Wada just talking about the appeal, and Kyrgios said, "Why is he still playing?" And then there was a Q&A that he was putting on his Instagram, and one of the fans commented like doubles with center, and then he was like, I only play with clean players. So he's just going after him. I feel like it has something to do with that he's dating his ex-girlfriend, and like Kyrgios just has something against Sinner, but he will not lay off. And I
Yeah.
feel like it could get awkward because those two are definitely going to come in contact at some point, right?
I mean, it just really seems like Kyrgios is I don't know. I don't get why Kyrgios just feels the need to be aggressive online. It's like why what is your like how why would you have any say in this matter? Like you don't get to have an opinion about this, dude. You're not even playing.
Yeah, I know. I know. He's just trolling Sinner nonstop.
Yeah.
And then in other news, I have some rather funny news. It's not ATP specific, but it has to do with ATP because it has to do with Paula Badoza, who is dating
Of
Stefano
course.
Tsitsipas, ATP player, and she came under fire on social media for posting a picture with chopsticks, like moving back her eyes or something, and like everyone just came at her saying it was racist, and I just thought it was funny. These two just can't catch a break. They just get
Jesus.
under attack all the time. And honestly, she put out an apology like, hey, I didn't mean to offend anyone. Like, come on, seriously. But anyway, I feel like if you're a professional athlete, you just kind of have to think twice before posting something, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it, it seems like a similar vein to Curious making these comments. It's like,
Yeah.
do you not think of the repercussions of your
Yeah.
actions?
Yeah, I know. What about you? What did you see this week?
Mine kind of relates to the Beijing final here, where Sinner obviously lost to Alcaraz, and now he falls to 3-0 or 0-3 against him this year. And I saw a comment from Sinner, which was that he wakes up every morning trying to understand how to beat Alcaraz. Um, and so now in the head-to-head, Alcaraz leads 6-4, and it kind of reminds me here of the 2006 Federer season, where Federer was the best player in the world, but he was 2-4 versus Nadal, and actually lost his first four matchups against Nadal that year. So Sinner has had a crazy season. He's 61-7, and he has six titles right now at the time of recording, but he's 0-3 versus Alcaraz, and it's kind of like a classic, like he can beat everybody except this one dude.
Yeah, you know what that sounds like? He should actually reach out to Federer and kind of like pick his brain because, like you said, it is a very similar comparison, and I think Federer could have some good advice for him.
Yeah, he's like, how did you were you able to overcome this one guy in your
Yeah,
way?
I feel like it's not even like an overcome thing. It's like, how did you deal with it? Because like it's gotta hurt, confidence wise.
Yeah, but I think the
Just like a
other aspect,
demoralizing thing.
yeah, is like you look at the matchups they've had, and they've all been so close that it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, it's not. I feel like it's less about like, oh, I think Alcaraz is significantly better than me, and that's why I can't beat him. It's like just those 1 or 2 points that make such a massive difference.
Oh, totally, totally. And I saw that they flew private together right after.
Yeah,
Like it's so strange to me that I guess they are very friendly, but that's
I
kind of the new generation. I
yeah, I
feel
mean,
like that's
speaking of
how it
that, I
is.
don't think they're like crazy friends. I just think
Hmm.
it's like they're not they're not enemies, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
they're
yeah.
willing, they're like, okay, we're both gonna need to get over to Shanghai. So
Yeah,
we might as
makes
well
sense.
share this plane. And they don't have that much animosity against each other.
Yeah. I feel like Nike is dropping the ball right now and not doing the same thing they did with Federer and Nadal, like where they made all those commercials and photo shoots with them. Like
Yeah.
they're not exploiting this great matchup
Marketing.
rivalry
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, marketing. But then again, I guess Nike's just not as focused on tennis anymore.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
they're
yeah. They feel like they've already hit the tennis market and they control
mhm.
a lot of it. But I feel like that you're also seeing, because of they're not focused on it as much, other people are kind of stepping up into it. Like think of New Balance. Like New Balance, I feel like was nowhere in tennis a couple
Mhm.
of years ago. Now they've got Coco Goff, they've got Tommy Paul, and then you also have On with Ben
Yeah.
Shelton and Iga for the women's side. So it's like these other brands are coming in because the brand that was like really kind of running things hasn't been, I don't know, like keeping their foot on the throat of the
Yeah.
market.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And no more Agassi. It's just kind of like make your brand look cool.
Exactly.
Like they do give Alcaraz his muscle shirts, which, is symbolic to Nadal.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How about bet of the week here?
Bet of the week. I am taking Poprin, who is plus 120 over Dimitrov. I saw this right away and it popped out at me because he's got a 2-1 head to head against him, and all those wins came on hard court, which is a good sign because they're playing on a hard court now. And um his most recent win was just not too long ago when he won his first 1000s in Canada. So he's still a little fresh. And I feel like Dimitrov may not be 100% here. Like, remember, he had that injury in the US Open. He had to retire. It wasn't that long ago. Poprin's young. Poprin could, he has a big game. He can tire Dimitrov out. So I'm also going to take a little side bet and go over 2.5 sets for plus 105 because all 3 times they played have gone 3 sets. So I feel like, um, you know, history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to rhyme. So
Yeah. I agree with you here. I think this is a great bet. I mean, this one popped out when I saw you had picked this one for bet of the week. It definitely popped. I was like, wow, that's seems like a great
mhm.
bet to me. Just because I mean, I love Dimitrov, but he doesn't seem like he's been dominating, kind of like he was last year, maybe in Paris. And you look at Popperin, who's definitely still on the rise as a player, and Dimitrov seems to be on the decline. It seems like a perfect storm for Popperin to step up here.
Perfect storm. Exactly. Who are you taking this week?
I'm going with a relatively big underdog, Mueller, plus 300 over Tsitsipas.
Mula.
Yeah, it's just one of those bets where I'm like, good odds. And I just wouldn't be surprised if we were like doing our recap next week and we were like, oh, and Tsitsipas lost to Mueller. Crazy upset. Not. But uh, it's just one of those ones where Tsitsipas, I feel like he just isn't that crazy dominant on hard court like he maybe used to be. Like he has every once in a while a good hard court tournament, but if you look at his last 4 tournaments, he's lost to an unranked player in each of them. So
Jeez.
I wouldn't be surprised if he made that 5 in a row.
Yeah, I like this bet too. I think this reminds me of like a Rublev, Rude, even Tsitsipas, where you see them pretty overwhelmingly favorite, but in your head you're like, all right, this could go either way. This is
Exactly.
not
Exactly. You're
reflecting
like,
exactly
okay,
how the
yeah.
match is.
You're like, this might be a toss-up match, and they're
Yeah,
giving major odds to the other
yeah.
guy.
Like if I see plus 500 against Rublev, I'm taking that all day.
Exactly, exactly. How about match of the week?
Match of the week. This was another interesting one. I took Djokovic barely squeaking by Mickelson. He beat him 7-6, 7-6. And when I say squeaking by, I mean like if a match goes to 2 tiebreaks, I feel like it could have gone either way, right?
100%.
It was still 2 sets, but it was very, very close. And it was just a great match overall, too. Like Djokovic went down early break in the first, came back, forced a breaker, obviously won the first set. And then Mickelson went down an early break in the second, and he came back, forced a breaker, and the set ended 11-9. So it was just yeah, super close, great points. There was actually the point of the match came in the second set tiebreaker where there was some cat and mouse up at the net, like drop shots, volleys, and then Djokovic just had an insane shot where he was sprinting diagonally towards a shot and was pretty much facing the whole other direction and like flicked his wrist somehow, got it back past Mickelson, did his little classic Djokovic celebration, getting into the crowd. But overall, what does this mean for Djokovic, right? Like it was a great win and it showed his tenacity, his athletic ability, but it was against Mickelson. I feel like he should, beat Mickelson pretty handedly. And then you have on the other hand Mickelson. This was a great match on his part. He almost beat Djokovic. So pretty great match overall, and good look for. I don't know about both players, but definitely Mickelson. You could potentially say Djokovic.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to say like it depends on how Djokovic does in his next match, right? Like if Djokovic comes into his next match and gets demolished, it's like, okay, this was just a bad look for him that it was this close. But I think generally right now, I would say good look for Mickelson because Mickelson has been having a pretty solid year, pushes Djokovic here. He's a lot of his losses in recent tournaments have been to like top guys. I think he's lost to Sinner twice in like the last 4 tournaments or something like that. So he's had not the easiest runs here, and he's at a career high ranking, pushing the number what is he 4 guy in the world right now. So I think I'd say positive for Mickelson more than negative for Djokovic.
Yeah, that's a good take. It was great seeing Djokovic, like, because when you don't see him play for so long, you're kind of thinking, okay, this could go either way. But um, just I feel like he got the jitters out early, like getting broken, first time serving in the match. That was kind of him just like, all right, got to get the rust out. And then kind of do the Djokovic thing after.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, what about you? What was your match of the week?
So I went for Tommy Paul. He came back to win over Tabilo in a crazy fashion. So the first set just goes to a tiebreak and Tabilo takes it. Nothing really super crazy from that one. But then in that second set, Tabilo just kind of dominated. Like he takes two breaks and goes up 5-1 in the second set. And Tommy holds a serve, but then at 5-2, Tabilo has 5 match points on his serve and ends up getting broken. So
Oh,
just so close to winning that match and can't get it done. And I think as soon as that happened, doubt kind of started creeping into his mind and the momentum starts going kind of Tommy's way. And then in the second service game where Tabilo was serving for the match, Tommy kind of took it easily because he had the momentum, like I was saying. And he kind of ended up struggling to close it out as well, though, because he had 7 set points before he ended up closing it out in the tiebreak. Like he was up significantly in the tiebreak and couldn't close it out. And actually, earlier at 5-6, I want to say he also had set points that he couldn't finish. But once he got that tiebreak, I think Tabula was kind of just broken. And Paul comes out in the third set, controls it, breaks early, and then ends up closing it out in 32 minutes, winning it 6-2. So just a great comeback. It's crazy to see how close he was to being closed out there and ends up coming back to win the match.
yeah, I know. And I could tell you that that's how the third set would have gone after, that result, being up that much and having match points. Just crazy there. Wait, you said he had match points, right? Or no?
Yeah, to be like 5 match
Tabila had
points.
5 match points. Oh
It's
my
just
God,
such
that's
a, I mean,
brutal, dude.
anybody that's played tennis can tell you like having a match point and not converting is such a mental toll because now oh, I have to play X amount longer, especially after you lose that set. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, and now I have a whole nother set. I could have been done with this match like 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy too. It's almost like even if you're down, but you save all those match points, you're kind of like you feel like you're winning even though you're not. You're like, all right,
Exactly.
I have the momentum. The momentum is behind me now.
Yeah, I think is honestly one of the more impressive accomplishments is like being able to have match points. Like you see it sometimes in tournaments where like some person has match points and then they kind of choke it, to be honest, and then
Mhm.
they're able to come back and continue and win that next set because you have to really be like, okay, I'm going to settle back into this. I'm going to play this set like it's a standalone set. I'm not just going to forget what was behind me. It's just so difficult to do.
Yeah, this is good for Tommy because I feel like we talked about him in the last couple weeks where he kind of choked a win too. Like
Mm-hmm.
he should have won and didn't. So good to
Yeah,
see this because I know he
yeah.
hasn't been playing that great after US Open.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just speaking on what I was saying earlier though as well. It kind of feels like sometimes I've heard a comment about golf. I think where it's like for a golf player to be really great, they have to be either really dumb or like insanely smart. And it's
Yeah.
like either you're dumb enough to just like forget, oh, I just lost that set, or you're so locked in that you're like, okay, I just have to completely like just that doesn't matter and just be fully locked in on that next
Yeah.
points.
Yeah. I think Federer has it's some kind of 15-second rule. It's like, all right,
Yeah,
first 5 seconds, acknowledge the point. Next 5 seconds, I think what like clear your head, and then next 5 seconds, think about the next point. It's like
exactly.
just something like a system that you have, whether it's like looking at your strings and fixing them or like fixing your dampener, something to just get your mind off of the previous point.
100%. I mean, like, yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it for him. He's like, okay, I have this whole system. He's like, okay, let the emotions out. Don't just
Mhm.
like ignore them, and then shift into like, okay, none of this matters or something like that, and then be like, okay, what's coming into the next point? Yeah,
Mhm.
and then you look like you said, there's some guys I think just have like a routine where it's like every single point, no matter what happened last point, I'm gonna shift my shorts. I'm gonna like Nadal. I'm gonna put
Pick my
my
ass.
yeah exactly. I'm gonna like put my hair behind my ears that isn't
Yeah.
there. Like
Yeah. Such a mental game, man. Badal. All right. And that's the show. If you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube at Painting Lines Podcast. Feel free to shoot us a DM or email us any questions or thoughts at paintinglinespodcast@gmail.com.